we hear a lot that you don't realize until you experience it, which is what we talked about earlier. You have to work on the business and not in the business as much as possible. There were periods where I was very heavily in projects and let the ball drop on other things, which at the time seemed fine. But 2, 3, 4 months down the track, you're seeing the after effects of those things. There were some times where I've had to use my own money to move things forward. We're past all that now, but there were periods where that was the case off the back of me essentially being an engineer and not a managing director for almost full time for periods. I think that's probably the hardest lesson I've had to learn. And now I'm trying to be very disciplined about not getting too involved in things. Occasionally I get a client who says to me, no, Adam, the business is called Hulkon. It has to be you. You have to do it. Can't be somebody else. We won't accept anybody else. I go in, I don't do a very good job because I'm pretty spread, and I backfill myself with one of my guys. And within a couple of weeks, the guys are like, this person's amazing. Like, why didn't you put this person forward in the first time? Working on the business and not in the business is definitely one of the most important things I've learned. You can listen to podcasts and you can hear it from mentors and things like that. And it doesn't really hit home until you've experienced what happens if you don't do it.
Welcome to Engineering Success, a show for industrial and engineering leaders. Whether you're leading an engineering firm, a manufacturer, or an industrial service provider, you'll hear actionable insights from your peers on how to beat the odds and create a sustainable business and the life you've dreamt of. I'm Rick Merton, and I've spent over 25 years building businesses and working with technical companies to solve their toughest challenges. Today's guest is Adam Hull, the Managing Director and Principal Civil Engineer of Hulkon, the firm he started in 2021. Hulkon is an engineering design consultancy with roots in major road infrastructure projects and has recently expanded into transport and energy infrastructure projects. Adam and his team have a client-centric focus and a drive to be the design partner of choice that delivers. With experience in project planning, design, and construction, Adam and his team have played an integral part in city-shaping projects, including most recently Northeast Link, Southern Program Alliance, and the City Link Tulla widening in Victoria. Hi, Adam. Welcome to the Engineering Success podcast, and thank you for joining me today.
Rick, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. We use the definition of a company's vision is the change it wants to make or the world it wants to create. With this context, what is Hulkon's vision or the change you want to make?
That's a very difficult question to answer because, in my view, these things evolve quite a fair bit. When you start a business, you don't necessarily have a vision of where it's going to be in 2, 3 years' time and whether it's real or not. At the time starting the business, I was dealing with a lot of clients, contractor clients that I found weren't necessarily satisfied with the different services they were getting in the design field. I felt like they were the type of people I connected with really well and had really good relationships with. My view was to create something where we could be in a close partnership with contractors, not be commercial, be in the same team, and we'd feel their pain if they felt pain, and try to build something that was longer term, not project by project, and to lead to a great relationship, which gives opportunities to my people to grow in, understand that space as well. That was the vision. We're certainly progressing in that way. The team's building and we're starting to create some longer term relationships with certain clients.
To follow up on that, how would you describe Hulkon's mission? For context, we define the company's mission as how it will deliver that vision. What are the activities or the tactics you're using to bring your vision to life?
One of the things we've really been focusing on is the relationship side with our contractors, trying to stay close, not to sweat the small things, variations, and try to understand their issues, be in the same tent as them to a degree. That's come through not just doing lump sum design work, but also seconding people into contractors to work as engineering coordinators and work with their estimating teams. So we've done tenders at cost or even some tenders for free as well, just to create that relationship, fundamentally know the people that are on that side of the fence such that we can be in a situation where a year later, we're still talking, we're still working on new projects together. As a business owner, we're not out there constantly looking for work for my team to do because sometimes it's coming to me because of these relationships we've created. The measure of that is the work in hand has been increasing. We've been growing, and it's not necessarily off the back of me constantly trying to find work. It's coming in the door through multiple sources.
Thank you for that. We'll explore what you do and where opportunities are coming from. But just to drill a little bit further, you use the word contractor there a couple of times. I'm assuming you're referring to your primary clients. So just tell us a little bit about who your ideal clients are and who do you really like to work for and with.
Without being too facetious, ideal clients are anyone that wants to pay us. Seriously, it's really construction contractors, builders, particularly in obviously the civil structure space. We've worked with these types of people for many years and always had a bit of a divide between designer and contractor. And it's really trying to break down that wall and be on the same team. So that's probably our ideal client because I feel like they're the type of people that we gel with the best and have the best relationships with.
To dig a little bit deeper. And I appreciate that we all want to work with people that pay us. When we drill into that, there is always the type of client that we really enjoy working with, either on values driven or size driven. Do you work on projects of specific sizes, or because the business is relatively young, you're open to work on a variety of different types of projects?
From a sector point of view, myself and the majority of the team, we have our roots in road transport and rail transport, working on level crossings here in Victoria, as well as major freeway upgrades. I worked for government for North East Link for a couple of years. My team is built of people that I've worked with in the past, not many people in our team that I haven't actually worked alongside, and they're all similar in their backgrounds as far as road and rail transport. So that's the background and the ideal place for us to work. The difficulty in that space is most of those jobs are quite large, and for a small company to be involved in those can be difficult. The types of work that we're currently doing is temporary works in that space, civil and structural, and then also the energy projects where we're doing civil and structural works, including drainage and flooding. In that energy space, it's really around wind, solar, and battery storage. They're the ideal type of projects as it currently stands.
These are all infrastructure projects, or at least it's not residential or commercial civil infrastructure.
Ideally, that's the background that we've got. The team's currently working on major temporary works package on North East Link as it stands. So some larger jobs, but then some smaller jobs also to further create relationships, improve the Holcon CV being a young company, and give younger people in the organisation the ability to take on more senior roles on projects, which is a bit difficult on major projects.
As I'm sure you can appreciate, it's a reasonably crowded market that you operate in. How do you position your business so that your clients and potential clients understand and believe your point of difference?
It is difficult. As you said, it's a crowded market. It's also tends to be a relatively price-driven market. So that does play into decisions. Being a smaller company, we can offer generally better value from a pricing point of view, but it's obviously not a great way to do business to constantly just be the cheapest. Having that relationship, being close to the clients, understanding when things are coming up, setting ourselves up from an early point to be the chosen designer on projects. That's where we've really been shaping ourselves, and that's working. We are getting repeat business. Price is a major factor when we start the relationship. Once that relationship's established and we deliver and we perform and we do these things that we say we do around the relationship, price tends to become less of a factor and less part of the discussion.
One of the things that we've seen in the market is often a differentiation can be created around values of your organization or the methodologies and IP, how you do the work and how you think about the work is a way to put that. Do you feel your values and methodologies and IP have enabled you to build any sort of point of difference, or is that something that you're thinking about or working on in the future?
100%. The values is a key thing from an IP point of view. We probably don't have anything necessarily different to anybody else. The values of engineering generally, I feel like the design relationship with contractors and the general market previous to us starting our company, it just got very commercial, got very us versus them. I want to break down those walls, be close, have it all based on values, not sweat the small stuff, understand that design is very important, engineering is very important, but it is a cog in the wheel of the project. The project goes through many life cycles from being thought up to being created to being maintained and operated over its life. Design forms a relatively small part of that. Having that context when we're undertaking our design, not only do we have to design something suitable for all the project life cycles, but we also have to ensure we're working closely with the contractor to help them have that context and have that focus as well. It's really about trying to come together as a team, understand that our problems are quite small in the scheme of a project life cycle, and try to work in a collaborative way to resolve things.
Well, come back to how you work as a team, how you take those values and that attitude or that collaborative customer focused down to the team level for implementation. Just to step back a bit and for context, before you started the firm, what were you doing and what motivated you to start Holcom?
I finished uni in 2010. I worked for Parsons Brinkhoff, which became WSP for about a decade, working on major projects, great opportunities to work on some city shaping projects in Victoria and overseas. That was amazing. I decided to leave there. Funnily enough, I did my interview with Northeast Link in the office, but my first day was in lockdown. I stayed there for about 2 years and realised I wasn't made for government. Being part of that system and understanding both sides of that government side of the fence and the design side of the fence, and seeing the lack of understanding about what the two sides of the fence did and how you could really improve things by having the context of both sides and asking the right questions and having the relationships on all sides of the fence to bring everything together. There could be a lot of savings. I saw a lot of waste, particularly when I was working in the government, and it got to my core. It really frustrated me, it really irritated me, and I wanted to do something about it. Starting the company was really off the back of trying to do something about that. The grounding that I got from working at PB and WSP and the government put me in a strong position to offer services and then start the company.
That question of overcoming waste or reducing the waste that happens in projects, how do you try to bring that into the day-to-day operations of Holcom?
A lot of that comes back to process and understanding the processes that a project takes from the very start through till the end of construction, where there is repetition, where there are assumptions made, where there are interfaces, and really breaking that down and trying to find the fat and cut it for the benefit of everybody, essentially. In Halcon, I've driven the team pretty hard to understand lots of different sides of the fence. That's one of the real benefits about doing temporary works. Temporary works gives you a really good visibility of construction process, the program. It's not something that a lot of designers get exposed to in their career. They might get little bits and pieces here and there. Without the right relationships and exposure to these sorts of things, you can have people with 20 years experience designing something but have never actually seen it be built and not understand what the interfacing conservatism that they've baked into their design costs on site. Temporary works is a great way for people to understand exactly how things are being built, and having those conversations with the guys on site and understanding these little decisions that we make in design, how have affected what they're doing on site and how it's impacting the program. The example I set for the team in projects, I seconded myself back into Northeast Link and had a value engineering role on one of the Northeast Link packages. We looked to cut a number of things that we saw as excessive. A lot of temporary works came out of the project through understanding the staging of the project and really trying to drive leaner solutions born off the back of conservatism.
It's so inspiring when we see people demonstrating the behaviours and values that we want to instill in how we want to operate and bringing what we want to do to life, which is a really good segue just to think back over the last 4 or 5 years of building Alcon. What are you most proud of and why?
There's a lot of great people here. There's a great culture within the company. We have a relatively young team, a lot of people in their early 30s who are real proactive go-getters. There's great company vibe and culture here. And I can see some of the feedback that I get from the team members and from our clients has always been positive. I think people are very happy to be here and they're really performing. So that's probably the thing that I'm proudest of.
We'll come back to culture and how you bring the values to life. Before we do that, just a bit of context in your role and your priorities. As I said in my introduction, you're the managing director and principal civil engineer. And as you said, you review most designs that the business is putting forward. The challenge in founder-led businesses is that we often remain heavily involved in many aspects of the business. Given the numerous priorities on your plate, how do you identify what your top priorities are and remain focused on them?
That's my largest battle at the moment and something I've become aware of over the last 6 months. I have a wife and 3 kids. That's my key priority before the business, and making sure that I have time to provide quality time for them. It can be really difficult given that there's clearly not enough hours in the day to do what I do. I'm pretty clear on the path that I need to take going forward, which is really around bringing on some support. We are now at that size where that's necessary. There's just too many things going on and I am dropping the ball on a few things. I'm trying to empower the team. A lot of the team that I have hired lately have been more senior to take on some of the responsibilities away from me. I'm a principal civil engineer for life. It's never going to change, but from the point of view of me doing that role on projects, that's definitely going to reduce going forward. How do I prioritize? It's a learning curve. It's something that I battle with every day. If you put too much time in one area, something else fails. There are certain things in the business that are super important, and without them, you don't have a business. Cash flow, business development, not the traditional engineering things, obviously. These things are some of the most important parts of having a business. Without them, you don't have a business. Come back usually from other things, but they're the sort of thing that you probably can't come back from it if you drop the ball. It's definitely been a learning curve, delegation and bringing on support. I'm looking at creating an advisory board for the company as well to hold me to account.
How do you split your time between working in the business, being the principal engineer, running client relationships and projects, versus on the business? That's both the strategic planning, things like the advisory board, business development and financial management. How do you manage to split your day? Or is it that after 6 o'clock you do on the business and before 6 o'clock you're in the business?
It's evolved a lot over the last 9 months. If you'd asked me 9 months ago, I probably would have told you I was 70% working in the business and 30% on the business. But probably flipped the other way now. There are elements of what I do where I'm working in the business, doing roles for the purpose of business development and shoring up clients, or working with a new client, putting myself forward for a project role because it's a brand new client that we want to do some work with and I want to develop the relationship. As the team grows and things develop, I've been working on the business a bit more, and the goal is to try to be 1.5 to 2 days a week maximum working on projects, and the rest finding work and managing the business. It's ever evolving depending on what pops up on a weekly basis though.
We tend to be the people that fight the fires first. Can we just drill into the advisory board? I'm interested in what drove the personal decision to establish, and then as a follow-up to that, what process or how have you gone around building the advisory board and who's likely to sit on it?
It's still in its infancy. We haven't actually had a meeting yet. I've had participants agree to join, is where we're at. We're going through the commercials now to put that in place and to organise our first sitting. As a person, I'm very self-aware of my own deficiencies. What I've found in putting the business together from the start and running the business is that the real lack of feedback. You do things and you don't really know it's the wrong thing to do or the right thing to do. When you grow up working at a major consultancy or something like that and you do something wrong, someone tells you immediately, no, you can't do that. When you go off to be a business owner, you can do the wrong thing and you don't find out till 9 months later when it's a big problem that you're learning on the job. The idea behind the advisory board, it came through actually a person that I met. They put it to me that they'd had one and had really transformed their business. I've gone down the path of seeking out a few people whose advice I very much value and trying to put them into a position where they can slap me over the head if it looks like I'm going down the wrong path. It's from anything from financials, projects or clients that they may have experience with, they may have opinions on, anything from a values or morals point of view where they think there's a bit of a sounding board for those sorts of things as well.
Are they people that have come from the industry, or are they people that have quite broad and varied experiences?
The intent is to have 3 people on the board, one specifically as a financial person and the other 2 from the industry.
I've used business coaches as essentially that. We've always set them up as the chair in the business, and then the leadership team meets once a month with them running the meeting to get that independent third-party advice. Unfortunately, it takes too much strength for most of our staff to point out when we're making a mistake.
I agree. I mentioned before that a lot of our staff are a bit younger, so they probably do find it more difficult to speak up. I try my hardest to put out there that I want that feedback. I do think people tend to struggle to give it sometimes. My experience with mentors, it's been a very personal thing. It's been really about your future, your morals, what you want to do, what you want to achieve as a person. I think with the advisory board, it's really key that I want them to focus on the actual business itself as opposed to me personally.
The mentors or coaches we've used have been on the business, not on me personally. One technique that I use that works well is every quarter, we ask everybody to answer 3 questions. What's worked, what isn't working, and what would you do differently? It's been a really effective way for me to see how others see the business.
That's a good point.
As a segue from that, a business is a collection of people who need to effectively work together. You've talked a little bit about the culture and the values you want to bring to the team, and how the idea of collaboration and reducing waste in projects is starting to filter through to your resources. To get a little bit more tactical and practical in that, are there any processes or tools that you use to motivate and mentor staff to get the best out of your team?
I find it a little bit difficult to create those processes and follow them. We've got pretty much what everyone else has around employee reviews and stuff like that. We do monthly meetings where the team talks about their projects and how they're going on the projects and things like that. So I don't think we have anything overly different in that space. And I am person who is not a big fan of process. I think most people probably aren't. I do like to challenge people when they try to introduce a new process. I find it to be pretty organic, walking around and talking to people. Something that's really been on the mind for me in the last few months, making sure I have the availability to just go talk to people one-on-one, a casual water cooler chat and see how they're going and see what issues they're having on projects. Putting my hand up to say, yeah, I'll quickly review that, send that through, or I'll have a look at that, or leave that one with me. I guess helping to challenge things or attend meetings ad hoc to provide some advice. Sometimes I'll just sit on mute with my camera off and sit in the background and I'll type Teams messages to the team and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? To try to give them the ability to stay in control of the meeting and not take over. I try to do it as organically as possible. I'm not a fan of process. Engineering design is a very heavily process laden world. So introducing new processes is definitely not something that I'm keen on.
Oh, the process could be a weekly one-on-one or a weekly team meeting or stuff like that. You talked at the beginning around the collaboration component and the values that you wanted to bring to the organization and to projects and the clients that you work with. Is there anything that you do within the context of your day-to-day operations, quarterly, weekly, or annually, to make sure your people are clear on these fundamental values and positioning that you want the business to stand?
I think more importantly, in bringing people on board, I'm very selective. I'm very selective about who I bring on, and I tend to entertain people who are of that mindset in the first place. It is a mindset. It's something that can be changed, and it's something that people need to develop with experience through relationships with construction and government. When you develop those relationships, you get a really good conversation going about what's your problems, how can I help you, what matters to you. And it's really built up over time. But it's also developed through initial interpersonal skills that people naturally have. I have been quite selective about who I've brought on board. So the need to push those things hasn't been great. Ensuring that I'm still the reviewer on projects allows me to review the work and then go back to the team and run through my views on things.
As a follow-up, before I started recording, you mentioned that you do a weekly meeting where you do a presentation for your team. Is that a vision style presentation in terms of what you're doing in the business and where the business is going versus a project orientated presentation? The reason I ask is because if that is a weekly meeting and you are presenting something each week, then that's the sort of system and process or weekly habit that I'm talking about that gives you an opportunity to talk to your team about the path that you're leading everybody on.
Definitely. That stuff is talked about. It's essentially a weekly update. When people get put into a project, they have a tendency to lose sight of what's happening in the business. The purpose of the update is to give everybody an update of what's happened in the last fortnight. We run through tenders, the status of upcoming projects, health and safety stuff, new starters, what we're looking for. One of the things I pride myself on is that I think I'm a very transparent person. My team has a lot of information about the company that most employees wouldn't have about their company. I put up a lot of numbers and give them a lot of understanding of how things are going because they want to know, right? They want to know these things. And the reality is most of them aren't secrets. That's the intent of that meeting. I do also have a Friday meeting with our senior leadership team where we run through everything that's happened for the week and everything that's going to happen next week. I run through all my meetings. I run through all the clients I've spoken to as a way of keeping myself accountable so they can put their hand up and say, oh, I don't think that's right, or I don't like that, or that's not a good thing to do. So that was the intent of that one. We do these meetings and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess there's no written process to follow, if that makes sense.
It's not unusual. In fact, it is the norm in engineering firms of your size that a lot of it's not documented. It's law, as in LORE, not LAW, in the organization. That's what I was fishing for, that sort of way that you're communicating with your team so that others can understand and think about that. And whether it's the level of transparency or just the openness, the fact that you're sharing all the meetings and all the conversations that you're having with the team and getting their input. That's exactly the sort of thing that helps set the vision and direction for the business. Thank you for that. That does actually give a really good understanding of how you communicate and set the direction with your team. Just to go a completely different direction, when we look at growth in engineering and industrial businesses, it really can come from two areas, either bringing in new clients or building deeper and better relationships with current clients. You mentioned that you're responsible for both the new business and some involvement in projects. When you think about how you're growing Holcon, where do you focus your time and why is that the agenda?
It's definitely the second one. Initially, it's always the first one, which is new clients. Over time, you work with a number of clients. You find those you get along with and you vibe with and you share the same values. You start to focus on them more, particularly if they can bring in more value to the business. In my experience, trying to work with new clients, it's extremely time consuming. It's very difficult. Once you've got runs on the board and you've got a great relationship and you've got shared values with a client, that's where the focus needs to go, because once that happens, it doesn't really feel like work as much. We work off a lump sum. We don't get retainers. It's very difficult for us to forecast and lock away work. We work with contractors who might want us, but they haven't locked in the work either. Having people bringing stuff to us is of really high value. Of all the parts of the business, the hardest thing to do is to be certain on work and what's coming in the door and to create those opportunities.
Is that ultimately your responsibility to build the relationship and seek out the next project? Or do you have people on your team that are really good and focused on that? For a little bit more context, what we often find is that the people below you or the founder are really good at running the projects, and they build great relationships and do quality work, which sets the foundation, but they're not necessarily seeking out or even asking about future projects. They're really focused on delivering the project the best the team can. And therefore it falls back to the founder to have that broader relationship and visibility. Is that what happens in your business, or have you engaged your team to have those business development conversations? Often we find that business development is a bit of a dark word in engineering firms.
You're 100% correct. It does fall to me. We are trying to put a bit more responsibility on the team, particularly the team who are a bit more senior and have had more time in the industry to develop networks and relationships. That's been bearing some fruit over the last few months. It always comes back to me. It's my risk. I'm the one who has to pay people on a monthly basis and pay bills. So it's 100% my risk. So it all sits with me in that sense. The team, as you said, they're very good at delivering. They're very good at creating relationships, and that certainly helps. But you do get into a point, particularly in the contracting world, where teams are typically split between tendering pre-contracts for delivery. So the relationships the guys make with the delivery team who aren't really involved in tendering new projects over the last 6 months, I've realized that I need assistance with and seeking help with and trying to delegate some of those tasks.
You mentioned that you've had some success in motivating, encouraging your staff below you to get out there and do some of the relationship-based business development. Can you share anything you've done?
We're in the process of implementing a bonus incentive scheme for the employees. They will share in the net profit of the business, which is based on minimum gross revenue and minimum net profit. It's a bit of bonus on the team to help us find work and deliver work more efficiently. That's something that we've been looking to implement from a marketing point of view, having the team make sure on LinkedIn that they've said they're at Halcon and sharing posts so that their network is aware of where they are and what they do is pretty important.
It is pretty important. I won't deny that, but I would argue that actually in some ways it's more important to help them with the questions to ask and the responses to give when somebody says, where do you work? So it's not a generic, oh, I work in a engineering firm or in a transport engineering firm. This goes back to those values and the IP in the business. Can I just drill a little bit into the bonus structure that you're putting in? I appreciate you haven't formed it yet. If the goal ultimately is to encourage people to bring work into the business and to effectively and efficiently deliver the work, but if we're looking at the front end, did you think about bonusing people based on work that they bring in, or it was really trying to bonus people on the impact of the whole organization?
The structure we are documenting is two-stage. The first stage is broad and is paid equally to everyone, not a percentage of income, but a fixed amount to make sure that the people who are maybe performing but on less salary, the intent is that there will be a second level for discretionary bonuses for that type of thing. So that's all. The intent is to communicate that over the next few weeks. The intent is to communicate that to the team relatively soon and put that out there as a discretionary bonus. The example I used before, if it was a situation where a person just said, hey, you do that, we do that, how about I introduce you to Adam, and then they've just moved away, probably doesn't provide as much value as if they stay involved and they spearhead and lead that relationship. I want to keep it discretionary for that purpose.
Thank you for that. One of the hardest lessons to learn is one that I've often had to revisit a few times. Thinking back of not just building Holcomb, but over your career, is there a hard lesson that you've had to learn and then possibly relearn? And if so, how has that impacted the business?
It's a pretty simple one. And I think it's one that we hear a lot that you don't realize until you experience it, which is what we talked about earlier. You have to work on the business and not in the business as much as possible. There were periods where I was very heavily in projects and let the ball drop on other things, which at the time seemed fine. But 2, 3, 4 months down the track, you think the after effects of those things. There were some times where I've had to use my own money to move things forward. We're past all that now, but there were periods where that was the case off the back of me essentially being an engineer and not a managing director for almost full time for periods. I think that's probably the hardest lesson I've had to learn. And now I'm trying to be very disciplined about not getting too involved in things. Occasionally, I get a client who says to me, "No, Adam, the business is called Hulk On. It has to be you. You have to do it. It can't be somebody else. We won't accept anybody else." I go in. I don't do a very good job because I'm pretty spread, and I backfill myself with one of my guys. And within a couple of weeks, the guys are like, "This person's amazing. Like, why didn't you put this person forward in the first time?" Working on the business and not in the business is definitely one of the most important things I've learned. You can listen to podcasts and you can hear it from mentors and things like that. And it doesn't really hit home until you've experienced what happens if you don't do it.
I personally know that because at the moment I'm filling in for one of my team members who went on maternity leave early. I lost 20% of my week because I'm in projects. I appreciate that. Just as a broad question, and obviously in some ways you're very much still in the early stages of Halcon, only being 4 or 5 years old. If you could change one aspect of your business overnight, what would that be and why?
It's definitely the way we get paid. I think we're part of an industry which is very much lump sum. It's very much people get paid by government and the government pays the contractor and the contractor pays the designer, and we're all trailing by a month, and it's all very much lump sum based. I wish I could be on retainer in some way, shape or form, even at discount. It would be great to have the surety of fixed income. That's not really an industry we work within, which is something I would love to challenge, regardless of the type of money that comes into the projects. We do offer services that are not too dissimilar to other professional services like marketing, legal, accounting, industries where retainers are commonplace. That is something I'd like to change overnight, because if I could have a cash flow spreadsheet that for the next 12 months has the same number in it over and over again, I would sleep significantly better.
You know, if it happens in other regions and other markets, is there a model somewhere that we could pick up and look at how to adapt here?
It's not something that I'm aware of in engineering in Australia. Definitely some of the support services that we work with, talking about legal, HR, for example, it's on the edges of what we work within in our industry. But for design specifically, I'm not aware of it. I have that conversation with different contractors about. There's certain things, obviously, that you couldn't really put to a retainer, depending on the model. You might not want to do a $1 billion project on a retainer, working with the same clients to do tendering, reviews of the consultant's work or whatever it is, acting like an in-house design engineer for a contractor that doesn't have in-house design. We do that type of work, and that would be great work to do under a retainer.
It's not dissimilar to a secondment model as well. Have you had a conversation with any of the contractors, any of your clients around could it work and how could it work? I love the idea of challenging industry norms that have been there forever. Doesn't mean they're wrong or right. It just, that's how the industry's always done it.
Oh, I have had a conversation with one particular contractor that as a company we're really close to. There wasn't necessarily a concern with the idea. It was really a concern on how would you get that approved. There are just so many layers of approval to go through. It's not something I've tested. I probably should test. That's definitely a goal for me over the next 6 months to try to test that with a few clients.
It'd be a fantastic thing to explore and test. I find that with these sorts of things, it's a matter of finding a client who's open to change and try different models and testing it and building around that. Just to start to bring us to a close, you're going through huge amounts of change in everything you're doing. I'm really interested to understand your response to this question. A great strategy is obviously focused on the most impactful activities. Our experience has shown that at any point, a company can really only effectively work on quite a finite number of internal priorities, typically 3 or 4. Can you talk about 1 or 2 of your current strategic initiatives you're trying to drive forward in the business over the next year or so to drive change?
The highest priority one is this bonus incentive scheme, ensuring that when the team performs, they profit from it, and not so much the company, but more so them. I am focused on that. The bonus incentive scheme is very important to me, and the way that hopefully that can incentivize people to do things they are capable of, but not really thinking about as much. The advisory board, bringing on some support in the director space is also a very high priority. It goes back to that comment you made about the amount of things being finite. I think by doubling the number of hands here that can sign things. That will certainly improve the capacity for us to get things done. The energy space which we work within is definitely one of increased investment, and we do see ourselves as a very strong player in that area. There are lots of learning curves in that space, particularly for our clients. There's also a lot of ability for that type of work to be done either offshore or through automation, because a lot of that work can be quite repetitive. So exploring that further, we've already started trying to implement it on projects is of high importance to us. It's not like a major rail tunnel or road tunnel where the interfaces are super complex and you need lots of hands on it and processes around it. Some of these roads are gravel roads in the middle of nowhere. All you're really trying to do is minimize your impact to the landscape and environment and flooding and drainage whilst giving you the cheapest or the lowest number of quantities. It's definitely something that can be done with smarter processes at less cost.
My final question, and this is broader look. Bill Gates famously said we overestimate what we can get done in 1 year, but underestimate what we can get done in the next 10 years. Where do you see Halcon in the next 5 to 10 years? And what do you think are some of the key obstacles that you've got to overcome to get there?
10 years is a long way away, obviously, for a company that's 3 years old. We have changed so much over the last 3 years. We've tripled in size every year. We've gone from people working at home and being seconded to having a little shared office to now having our own space. We have changed so much. It's very hard to really pin down those types of things. I do feel a little nervous about sharing these types of things. But I do see that with our values and where we want to go and what we want to contribute, particularly in the energy space with the investment going on, we could certainly grow to a company that's more than capable of delivering major wind farm projects, major solar projects, all on our own, having multiple projects on the go and offering a workplace for our employees where they can prosper as well. Hopefully I've stepped away a little bit and enjoying life with my family and teenage children. They will be in 10 years. Being able to step away and seeing the fruits of my labor, the young team I've got here being 10 years more experienced and absolutely dominating is where I'd like to see us.
Adam, that was my final question. So thank you again for joining us. I look forward to watching your success and how you leverage the advisory board, implement a bonus structure into the team. Most importantly, I look forward to seeing how in the next 5 years you redefine how commercial relationships exist in engineering space and build out a model that has sustainable retainers so that you can sleep better at night.
Thanks for having me, Rick. I appreciate it.